Thanks for joining us here on KGRA DB, the Global Radio Alliance, Van Buren, Arkansas, Salt Lake City, Utah. It's wonderful to have you all join us tonight for Phenomenon Radio Live with our very special guest, Stan Gordon, back once again. Before we get back to the interview, it's time for the news brought to you by earthfiles.com. Here's Linda Moulton Howe. Linda?
I lived near Doylestown, Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia, from 1993 until 2004. In the first 3 years, the trees around my house filled with gorgeous fireflies every summer. And then, by 1996 onward, fewer and fewer showed up. By the time I moved to the West in November 2004, there were scarcely any. I had even called the University of Pennsylvania entomology department to ask why the fireflies were disappearing, but no one had any answer. Now, this week in the October 18th, 2017 science journal PLoS ONE, a recent Netherlands study reports that insects are disappearing from German nature preserves at a shocking rate. Ecologist Kasper Hallman at Radford University, east of Amsterdam, studied numbers of insects collected in 63 German nature preserves between the years 1989 to 2016. In those 27 years, the biomass of flying insects decreased by a seasonal average of 76%. And yet, each of those 63 nature preserves are supposed to be protected areas. Professor Hallman says this decline is very alarming. Originally, there was suspicion that global climate change could be the cause, but warming temperatures should help insects, not kill them. So what is behind the massive disappearances of insects, not only in Germany, but in many parts of the world now? Will this be a steady decline toward insect extinctions? No one yet knows for sure. But for all of you listening to this Earth Files news report, if you have seen a big decline in fireflies, butterflies, bees, and other flying insects wherever you live, please email me, earthfiles@earthfiles.com. Think of a reporter who files news about the Earth. So again, my email address is earthfiles@earthfiles.com. This is Linda Moulton Howe. Please stay tuned to Earth Files news updates on KGRA radio and visit every day my science, environment, and Real X-Files news website, earthfiles.com, for more on breaking stories about our universe, this solar system, and the planet we live on.
And that's the news brought to you by earthfiles.com. Now back to the program.
Hi, Stan. Before the break, I was posing this question. What do you think about some of these data points that have come up in reports where people have seen a big Sasquatch, Bigfoot, walk across their wood deck, and then the creature might disappear or run off, and the people are stunned to see burned scorch marks 14, 16 inches long in their wooden deck?
Well, again, another interesting phenomena. And, you know, if you talk to researchers around the country, as I've done since the 70s and around the world, actually, I found even back 40-some years ago that there was a lot of strange aspects of the Bigfoot phenomena that a lot of people were not talking about because, one, a lot of the researchers had these kind of reports, but they were reluctant to publish them because they didn't want to get in trouble with their peers who always believed that Bigfoot was an unknown animal of some type. And a lot of the witnesses were reluctant to talk about it. But there's so many anomalies associated with Bigfoot throughout the country and around the world. And something I brought up is the fact that with the footprints, you know, in the United States, Pacific Northwest, California, different areas, going back years and years, and some people may or may not be aware of this, but in a lot of the areas where you had your typical five-toed footprint, you also had three-toed footprints show up and occasionally even four-toed tracks showing up. It's the same thing here in Pennsylvania, especially during the 73, 74 outbreak. You had a lot of three-toed tracks, but you also had your typical five-toed tracks. But over the years, not only do you have the three-toed, the four-toed, and the five-toed tracks showing up, and still showing up at times, but there's a whole series of other very strange footprints that have been showing up. And these are cases where we pretty much were able to eliminate that these were fabricated or hoax tracks. We've seen hoax tracks, and I had a lot of different specialists. We had a podiatrist, we had an anthropologist working with our group over the years. We had police officers working with us. So we were out there, and you could tell in most cases pretty easily what tracks are real and not real. But there are also a number of tracks that are not consistent with what you generally see, even though some of the tracks I've seen here in Pennsylvania are similar to ones, for example, I've even seen in China. And but there's variations on the tracks. So that just brings up another whole part of the mystery. I mean, it's hard enough to believe that you could have one type of unknown specimen running around out there, but how can you have multiple different types of these species or something if some of these other tracks are real? And then to go even stranger, I've heard reports from other researchers. I talked to some witnesses who have told me that they followed a series of footprints that suddenly would change it to a completely different type of track. I mean, that even adds more and more to the mystery.
What about the scorching? And I'm thinking specifically of a case that I probably learned about this in the mid-'80s, and it was in Pennsylvania. It was up in a forest. I don't remember where, but the sound was on a porch, and there were two women in this kind of cabin house. And they also, like the case you had, they had some kind of a shotgun. And they went to the door together with their shotgun because they didn't understand what the noise was. When they opened up the door, standing there was this huge, as they said, like a gorilla looking like a human. And they raised up their gun. I do not think they shot, though. And the creature seemed to turn and disappear going down the steps of their deck. They stressed that it seemed to be disappearing in the air as it went down the stairs, which scared them. And then after it was gone and they had the light on, they're looking at, as they said, it was as if this thing could scorch with heat and left these prints right on the wood. Can you even speculate about this whole idea of the Sasquatch phenomena leaving scorched tracks in wood?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't recall any of the cases I worked on. I've heard of those stories. I have not worked any firsthand, so I haven't seen that type of evidence. It's really amazing stuff. The more you get into these phenomena, that, again, there's so much of this we just don't understand. And you're talking about how these things move so quickly. Well, that's something you're hearing more and more about with various cryptids on the ground. The witnesses are telling you it's here and it's gone. I mean, I had cases go back years ago in daylight where, example, the witnesses are standing there. There's a Bigfoot on their left side of them, ahead of them. Instantaneously, it vanishes and disappears, and momentarily it appears on the right side of them in a different location. It's here. They come and they go. They're here and they're gone. Some of the people say the agility of these things are amazing, but they move so quick that they can't even understand how they can move that fast. It's like it's just here and they're gone. And this is not just with Bigfoot. It's some of the other cryptid reports we're hearing as well. And it's just fascinating. You were talking about this police officer encounter. Well, even that's been brought up with whatever this officer saw recently.
Okay, and you've got this at your website, and you call it Police Officer Encounters Strange Creature with Glowing Head in Pennsylvania, and that this was late August 2017, so this is only a few weeks ago. Can you go into this in some depth?
Yeah, this happened. The officer was on patrol. I'm just saying it was in the southwestern section of Westmoreland County because, of course, he doesn't want to be identified. And what he told me was that he's on patrol. He's patrolled this area very commonly, and he's riding down this rural road, and he sees what appears to be a ball of very dull white light low to the ground. And he thought that was kind of unusual because he's not familiar with any type of artificial lighting in that area. And as he moved close, he got about 50 yards away, he said this round light suddenly rose up or stood up from the ground. It was then they observed something that he just said he couldn't understand, he couldn't process in his mind. He said it was the weirdest thing he had ever seen. And he said the ball of light was actually the head of a very strange being that looked to be about 6 feet or taller. And he said it was tall and very skeletal thin. And then he said he was of the opinion that the creature, when he first saw it, that had been lying on its belly on the ground with its head facing towards the road. It then stood up facing the road. And it was a dark area, and he said the dull light from the glowing head illuminated the upper section of the body of the creature. And as he watched it, the creature turned to the right, and the dull illumination from the head lit up the shoulder area, and the creature turned and faced him, then turned to the left and took off at incredible speed towards the location away from the road. As it moved off, the witness could see its arms swinging. He said he indicated that it took off at a speed that you only could call abnormal. It was faster than anything he had ever seen. He said it was there and then it was gone. The same thing we've heard from other people. And the witness assumed that the creature moved on 2 legs. However, he could not see the lower section of the body. It was dark. He couldn't see the legs. So he said this thing is standing about 6 feet or taller. The head was about 8 to 10 inches in diameter, shaped like a ball. But he said the head was just a ball of light and possibly more of an egg shape. He said the light emitted to be just a dull white light. The light illuminated the shoulders, the top of the chest, and a section of the arms. The witness could not see the hands. The chest looked to be about 18 inches across. The waist appeared to be small, but the arms were abnormally long, and the long limbs looked skeletal with no muscle mass. The skin tone appeared to be dull grayish blue, and he could not see any facial details. He said he watched this thing for maybe about 10 seconds. He said he was so confused as to what he saw and about how it could move so fast, and he pulled up his vehicle to the location where the creature had been, and he turned on his vehicle spotlight, searched around the grass in the area. He looked around, but he saw no evidence on the ground, and the officer told me he just could not figure out what he had seen. So it was a very interesting account, and it's not something you hear about every day, but interestingly, it was about a week ago, I get a report from another person who lived in the northern part of Westmoreland County, and this person doesn't even have a computer, wasn't aware of any other kind of activity like this. It was actually a friend who encouraged her to call me, and this person was taking a walk at dusk, and this is around the 3rd week of September, so this occurred a few weeks after the police officer sighting, and she was taking a walk around dusk, and she sees this figure approaching from across the road, thought it was a neighbor taking a walk. As she looked, she realizes that it was not a neighbor, but a strange being that a basic human form stood about 5'8". She said what she saw scared her a lot. The head of the creature was egg-shaped, wider at the top and narrow at the bottom. The color of the creature was odd and gave the impression it was sickly and in poor health, that it looked to be kind of a light cream to ivory color. What frightened her was that she could not see any facial features except around what would be the mouth. She noticed what seemed to be a wrinkle down one side. She saw no eyes, nose, or ears. The body appeared to be thin, but wider around the shoulders, about 20 inches across. The witness could not see any arms. The legs were straight and thin, but they seemed to be bent outward from the knees. She said it was hard to explain, but there appeared to be something odd about the legs. They were separated, and one leg seemed to be different than the other one, as though it was being dragged. And she said, even stranger is that the body seemed to be covered with what she described as bib overalls. They appeared to be dark blue or charcoal color. The creature made no sound. She noticed no odd smell. She said the creature seemed to be watching her a short time. A short time after she saw it, she noticed some people starting to approach the area, and the creature suddenly disappeared very quickly and went into the tree line. She said she had no idea how it suddenly just got back into the tree line. And when the other people moved off, it reappeared again. This time the creature was about 35 feet away near the woods and appeared to be looking at her, and it took several steps in her direction where it approached to about 25 feet. The witness said she became very frightened and had a bad feeling and ran to her home. The witness said it felt like that there was some type of purpose, but she didn't know what it was. There were no dogs or pets in the vicinity. Before she saw the creature, she noticed a strange screeching sound coming from the woods. She thought at first it was an owl. However, she knows the sounds of the owls in the area, said this was different, and it seemed to be very loud and steady, and it sounded quite upset. So, if you look into the details of the report, it's quite similar in many ways to what the officer saw.
Yeah, and this whole idea of the human getting the impression of the being sick, was there any suggestion that she was getting telepathic thoughts, words, or symbols in her mind from whatever this was?
Well, not brought up. Nothing I could see when I talked to her extensively. So that has not been brought up.
Okay, and the egg shape. I'm thinking of the LAM, that lamb character that goes back to like the 1800s when Aleister Crowley talked, and he drew that creature that he called lamb that he encountered when he did some sort of special meditation, and he referred to it as an extraterrestrial with the head bigger at the top and narrowing sort of down but not pointed chin. If that's similar to this, that Aleister Crowley illustration goes back to 1800 and something.
Yeah, very interesting. And you bring up telepathy. This is another area of Bigfoot that I've rarely come across in Pennsylvania. I mean, I know there's cases of, and there are people around the country, out in California, different areas. We've heard from people who claim to have had pretty much constant contact with Bigfoot. Well, these cases in Pennsylvania, you hardly ever hear about that. And there's only been a few cases that I can think of where these were people who really had no interest in Bigfoot. They had their encounter. They were pretty shook up over the encounter, which had never happened. They very reluctantly told me that they had the mental impression this thing was trying to communicate with them. But there was one case that stood in my mind because of what happened, and I was at the scene. And this was many years ago. Again, between Latrobe and not far from the ridge, Chestnut Ridge. And there have been a number of Bigfoot sightings in the area, and various people had seen it. And our teams were out there investigating, interviewing the people. And I was with a group of people that night standing there. And this one person who apparently had a history of some paranormal abilities and psychic abilities was telling me that this creature, this Bigfoot, appeared to be trying to communicate. And that night while we were there, the creature had mentally communicated to this person that tomorrow morning, the next morning, up in Homer City, up in Indiana County, which is about 15 miles away, that there would be a UFO incident. And lo and behold, early the next morning, there was reports from Homer City, and actually made the news, if I recall, that people around there were calling about a strange sound, that is very loud sound over the area that they couldn't identify. Some people thought it was an aircraft was in trouble, but there was no aircraft in trouble. Nothing was missing. And it was actually serious enough that the fire departments went out and searched and couldn't find anything. And I always thought that was a very interesting event.
Yes, and I'm also wondering about the whole idea that you could have holographic entities, you could have something that's organic placed on this planet for monitoring purposes that might be out of tissue, as we know tissue on this planet, but designed specifically to be upload-download technology in an organic form. And then, Stan, you go to all of the so-called flying humanoid reports that have been in Pennsylvania over the years. And in your website, you've got one from this year of January 10th, 2017, of a flying humanoid reported in Kentucky. And I'm thinking about this big box of holograms and other dimensions, because you start taking all of these complexities and saying, how do they leave scorch marks? How do they have glowing heads that appear to be translucent? And are we dealing with a myriad of some kind of technology for an intelligence that wants to be able to interact with Earth life forms without scaring us? But the human always has a gut sense about whether they're in front of something that is positive or negative. And that seems to be a strength of humans, but raising the question, are we dealing with holographic technology in most of these reports, including the flying humanoids?
Well, in some of these cases, again, you do have some physical traces, some of the sites. One thing I found years ago, it's still ongoing very commonly. Many low-level, close-range UFO sightings commonly occur in the vicinity of energy sources. So do close encounters with cryptids. So I have many reports of encounters with Bigfoot, the Thunderbirds, the huge flying creatures that continue to be reported even recently, Black Panther sightings, these floating entities you're talking about, the winged humanoids, all these weird things that people reporting commonly occur around high-tension power lines, power plants, gas wells and gas lines and radio towers and lakes and reservoirs and railroad tracks and windmill farms. It goes on and on and on. I believe, and I've said this for years, I believe that there's an energy connection to the phenomena that we're dealing with. And, again, what it is, we don't know. There's a lot of these reports, again, along the Chestnut Ridge. And there's been all kind of reports of all kind of oddities up there and people seeing, the balls of light. And there's been reports of different areas of people actually seeing balls of light change into creatures. And I believe you've had some of those reports.
Yeah, and as we were talking about earlier in the show tonight, from Tibet to other places, it's very clear that these luminous balls are a technology, and that even in that one case where you had a Sasquatch that was holding a sphere, that is almost as if there is some kind of what we would call, if we carry flashlights in the woods, that we are dealing with phenomena from God only knows where, that the spheres, these glowing spheres, seem to do everything, transport people, perhaps generate energy that maybe causes fear among humans. And what I'd like to do is hold this thought of, while we take a break, and when we come back on the other side, let's go into the details that you have on the flying humanoid recently in that Kentucky area in January, and some more on these flying humanoids that have even been being photographed and in magazines recently.
Be sure to check out Linda Moulton Howe's Earth Files YouTube channel for weekly reports on the latest in science, the environment, and real X-Files. Also, visit the award-winning website, earthfiles.com, with over 2,000 in-depth reports that go way beyond the 6 o'clock news. That's earthfiles.com. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back for the final segment of tonight's program on your contact for alternative talk radio on the planet. You're listening to the Global Radio Alliance on KGRAradio.com.
For years, our listeners connect to the KGRA on various platforms like TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and many more. Now, you can stream your favorite paranormal talk radio shows with our new fully integrated custom KGRA mobile apps for Android and iPhones. Listen to your favorite paranormal talk shows from any mobile device 24/7, free with smartphone or tablet. Utilize custom features to access news, show pages, archives, contests, events, and live interactive chat rooms. Set show notification alerts and never miss your favorite live programs. All free and available to download in Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Around the world for decades have come high strangeness reports of mysterious aerial lights, beams, animal mutilations, human abductions, secret space and military programs focused on an alien presence. One reporter of these Earth mysteries is Emmy Award-winning TV producer, writer, and editor Linda Moulton Howe. She reports and edits the science, environment, and real X-Files news website, earthfiles.com.
We are moving from the paradigm that we are alone in the universe to a new one in which we are not alone. And something out there is interacting with us, our animals and plant life, forcing glimpses of other realities upon us.
Linda has produced 4 large books about these phenomena with hundreds of color images and illustrations that reviewers such as New York Times best-selling author Jim Marrs describes as an amazing accumulation of evidence. All her books, An Alien Harvest, the 2-volume Glimpses of Other Realities, and Mysterious Lights and Crop Circles, along with documentaries, are available in the shop at earthfiles.com.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll-free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Hi, it's AJ with Vibes Mind, Body, Spirit. The Vibes Tribe seeks to assist you in creating and maintaining an uplifting and balanced state of being in your personal space. Palo Santo is a mystical tree that grows on the coast of South America. Palo is loved by many for its energetic cleansing and healing properties and is also popularized for its heavenly presence in keeping your energy grounded and clear. Burning Palo provides an uplifting scent to raise your vibration and is also beneficial for relieving stress, anxiety, depression, and emotional pain. Palo Santo is also known for relieving symptoms of the common cold, headaches, and asthma. We offer Palo Santo in resin, powder, or by the stick. Go to onlinevibes.com for all of your vibration elevation needs and receive a free stick of Palo Santo with any online purchase over $25. Shop onlinevibes.com, that's onlinevibez.com, and get your vibes on today.
UFOcongress.com is where you go to check out the Guinness World Records largest UFO conference. The next event is going to be held February 14th through the 18th, 2018. At UFOcongress.com, you'll find out why so many people go to the UFO Congress. It's because we have the best speakers, the most amazing venue, and very affordable prices. Don't forget the website's UFOcongress.com. We look forward to seeing you at the next International UFO Congress.
Your official contact for the best alternative talk on the planet. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Phenomenon Radio Live exclusively on KGRAradio.com. It's time for the final segment of the program with tonight's very honored and special guest, Stan Gordon. Here's Linda Moulton Howe.
Thanks, Race. And Stan, I was looking at your website and I was so intrigued that on January 10th, 2017, that you've got a story about, quote, flying humanoid reported in the Kentucky, Ohio area. You and I have talked about thunderbirds for a long time, but this is brand new. Can you go into this in some detail?
Yeah, well, I deal mainly in Pennsylvania, but I do get input from around the country. And I talked to this fellow, gave me an in-depth account of what had taken place. This was, again, January 10th of this year. And he told me he was driving eastbound on Route 52. He said it was a very desolate section of road. He said it was about a quarter mile from the Ohio River. And from what I understand, it's on the Ohio-Kentucky border around Ashland, Kentucky. And he's riding down the road that night. He said it was a cold, it was a misty rain. There were very few cars on the road. And he said suddenly, only about 35 to 40 feet off the ground, he observes a silhouette in the approaching traffic light. And then he has his headlights on. And, of course, he saw what appeared to be a large humanoid creature with huge wings. And he said he could see the humanoid body. The body itself, he says, about 5 to 5.5 feet long. The skin color was dark tan, and he said it definitely was not dark black or dark brown. The wings of the creature were estimated to have a wingspan of 12 to 15 feet. He saw no feathers and only appeared to be skin on the body. And the witness said he observed it for several seconds as it approached him, passed directly overhead. He stated he never saw the wings flap and that the wings were spread out. He did notice that the joints of the wings were very pronounced, and the legs were held together and held back, and that the arms were held along the side of the body, extended to around the thighs. He said he heard no sound during the few seconds that he observed it. So it was just a few second observation, but he was able to get some pretty good detail what he saw.
Stan, was he able to see what like that guy at the intersection, that the wings, that he got to see the wings rise up high and come back down and keep doing this, which is what astounded the young man in the story I was telling you about. Did this guy, in this case, did he get to see these massive wings move up and down?
No, he said he never saw them flap, that they were spread out and held out the whole time he saw it.
It's amazing that there could be aerodynamic motion if the wings are not flapping.
Yeah, under the topic of what we call thunderbirds here in Pennsylvania, a lot of the reports I get, they're just huge, overgrown, generally dark brown or black, massive birds. And just like with UFO sightings, very difficult to judge altitude and size, but in some of these cases, these huge birds were very low to the ground, and in some cases they're actually on the road where they were blocking the road. The vehicles couldn't pass. In a couple cases, they were eating roadkill. I remember one case from West Virginia. I interviewed the guy several years ago, and early morning on a 2-lane highway, and he's riding down the road, and he has to hit his brake because there's this huge, gigantic bird that stood at least 4 feet tall. He gave a great description of this thing, but he said he just could not believe the massive wingspan. He said he kept watching this thing flapping its wings, hopping from one leg to the other, trying to get off the ground. And as it's flapping its wings, he could see the end of the wingtips, and he could see the gravel and the dirt flying up. And he went back the next day to measure it. It was 21 feet across.
Wow. Wingspan 21 feet. That really is sort of from one side of a country road to the other.
Yeah, and it was amazing. So you get these giant bird reports, but then some of the reports are more like gigantic bats that have no feathers or just leathery skin. There have been numerous cases. One case in 2008 down in Washington County on a major highway in the afternoon, we had reports that people were seeing this huge giant, like a giant bat about 100 feet up, came down within 20 feet of some of the cars. People were pulling their cars off the road to watch it. One guy was seen with a camera taking photographs of it, but he's never come forward. I'd like to see those pictures. And so that's something. And then some people, when I talked to over the weekend, I was at a very big local event, and many, many people came up to me sharing even some of the recent accounts. I probably had at least 4 people independently that told me about seeing thunderbirds in the area. And one woman who I'm going to be interviewing, but I've had other reports around this area, she swears that what she saw very low above her car was a pterodactyl. And I've interviewed numerous people who've given me a detailed account, some who are very familiar with prehistoric animals, who swear that what they saw was a pterodactyl. And then you've got the flying humanoid reports that come in. And we had back several years ago, back in 2011, up in Butler County, we had a very, very interesting case that has become known now as the Butler gargoyle. And we've heard secondhand reports earlier this year that allegedly has been seen again in the area, though there's no way to confirm that at the time. But it was a really interesting case. This was a businessman who I got to know very well. I've interviewed him many times, met with him personally many times. And early morning hours, he's riding on a rural road between Chicora and East Brady in Butler County, north of Pittsburgh. And he says he's riding down the road when all of a sudden he sees something on the right side on the grass, and he thought it was a deer. He stepped on the gas to move a little closer, and whatever this thing was, it was hunched down, and then it stood up. And he said this thing was very tall and muscular, and he had high beams on it, and he watched as a creature walk in front of a big yellow reflective road sign that was over 8 feet tall. And it crossed the 2-lane road and 3 long steps and continued off into the woods. And he said to me, he said, I've heard stories that people claim that they have seen Bigfoot in this area, but he said, this was not a Bigfoot. He said, this thing had a humanoid figure. It was at least 8 feet tall, but appeared to be covered with smooth, leather-like skin that was either dark tan or light brown in color. And he said the creature never looked at him at all. He observed it from the side. He said the head appeared to be kind of flat in the front section, then rounded out. He said it was like an aerodynamic helmet, and that the top was not quite a point, but looked like a ridge on top of the head. And the face was flat, and the eyes were not clearly defined, but he thought that they appeared to be pointed in the corner. The ear was observed on the left side was long and flat, came up and back, was pointed up backwards like a flap. The arms were very muscular and a little longer than that of a human. The hands looked more like claws, but the number of fingers was not clear. And he said the one trait that really stood out to him was the muscular, very muscular legs. And he said it was hard to explain, but the legs did not move like that of a human, and they looked like they were bent backwards. And he said also he saw what appeared to be wings on its back, which were tucked into its body, with the wingtips extending towards the side of the head. He noticed no unusual sound or smell, and he went back the next day and measured, and the sign was just over 8 feet tall, so this thing was just a little bit taller than that sign. Interestingly, within days, a number of other people up in that area were calling the local BORU group, the Butler Organization Research the Unexplained, and they were reporting similar sightings. And some of the reports from these people were really amazing. Here's one account, and I'll read this to you here. This was up in one of the little towns near there. 2 witnesses had just left the ice cream stand, headed for Reimersburg, when they noticed something crossing a road. They came to within 35 feet of the creature. They stated it was at least 9 feet tall, had dark brown skin, long arms, and broad shoulders, had a pointed head. It was moving again in front of them. And anyhow, there was a flat forehead, pointed ears, what appeared to be wings on its back. The body, they said, was really muscular, and there were 4 finger-like claws on each hand. The eyes were squinted but swept upwards at the corner. As the creature turned, the whole body would turn. The movement of the arms was not normal. The mouth looked like a slit. The wings looked like see-through mesh and resembled wings on a bat. The claws were black as coal, and the witness stated that this thing looked like it came straight from hell.
My God, what a description. Well, in a kind of a distant way, it reminds me, I was in Puerto Rico in 1996 investigating the chupacabras attacks there.
Yeah.
And I was at a home where they had two very large dogs. And to their shock, the man, I remember, was an eyewitness. One of the dogs had a yelp, and the man came running, and he sees what he at first thought was a bat. Huge wings. It is whatever this is right down on his dog's neck. He can see that. And the man is afraid. He's actually afraid, but he doesn't want his dog to die or be hurt. So he starts running at the dog and whatever this was. And that's how this man told me, Linda, it looked up at me as I ran toward them, and those eyes were red, like red glowing street lights. He said it would absolutely stop me in my tracks. I have never seen anything like it. I don't know what it was, but as I stopped, this thing let go of the dog and flew away, flapping these black leather, no feather wings, or whatever you want to call it. And he said, reminded him of a bat. And then he now has his dog in his arms, and at the backside of the neck are two puncture holes. They were 1/4 of an inch in diameter. They went into the dog about an inch, both holes. There's no blood. There's no fluid. And the day I was there, 2 holes were still in that dog's neck. It had happened only about a week or so before. They were closing up. But he said to me, with that kind of anxiety and frustration that humans feel in the face of this, what was this black thing with wings, with glowing eyes that he said looked like they were electric red, that did these 2 puncture holes in his dog's neck?
Yeah, interesting. And of course, historically, with a lot of the Bigfoot reports, you've got those luminous, glowing eyes. In fact, I've talked to witnesses who have been very close to Bigfoot in daylight, and some of them talk about the luminosity of the eyes, even in daylight, like the lighting was almost like artificially produced. And we hear so many of those reports of the bright, glowing orange or red and the bright green glowing eyes, like the eyes of the creatures that were seen in the famous Uniontown case. And some of the other cryptids, you get the glowing eyes as well. The Black Panther sightings we keep getting, which some of those reports are very strange and unusual. There's a whole different aspect of the Black Panther sightings that, reported in Pennsylvania year after year, even this year. And, we don't have black leopards or black jaguars here in this part of Pennsylvania. And some of those cases strongly indicate that there's something more to them, maybe than some of the flesh and blood explanations. And something that's not well known, but historically in Pennsylvania and other parts of the country, sometimes when you have a localized outbreak of phenomena going on in a certain area, not only do you get Bigfoot report of Bigfoot sightings, but you get other cryptids, such as Black Panthers, being reported, and there are some instances where 2 different cryptids have been seen together, such as Bigfoot and Black Panthers.
Yeah, and in England, that Dartmoor forest that is so famous historically for all kinds of weird things. I've seen a photograph that a farmer took, and it was like a black cat. The longest body, I think, way longer than a normal black cat. But the farmer who got this photograph said that after he had taken the photo and he's watching this mammoth black cat, it seemed to evaporate, was the word he used, evaporate in the air. And Stan, we're right back, that things that pop in and evaporate, how can they be strictly flesh and blood from our planetary kind of matter system? It is as if things are moving dimensionally in and out of some other place, coming in here and disappearing. And we've been talking now about these black wings and things that seem to be ominous. But in one of your recent reports at your website, This appears to be a story about something that had beautiful pale green iridescence of wings. And your title was Mystery Oversized Moth-like Creature Reported in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and actually that happened up towards the Allegheny National Forest. I was up there several weeks ago speaking at a Bigfoot event. So you're looking up around Tionesta, up around Kinzua Dam. All those areas are fluent with reports of Bigfoot encounters, UFOs, cryptids, all kind of weird things going on for years and years. And I interviewed a number of people up when I was up there who have been having recent Bigfoot encounters up in that area. But this was something completely different. I've interviewed this couple a number of times. They live not far from the Allegheny National Forest. And on July 8th of this year, and they live in the forest area, they encountered something they could not explain. And the wife, 9 o'clock that morning, wife was out on the deck of the house, and on the post, a woman noticed what looked to be a very large, oversized moth resting on a 6x6 vertical post. The moth looked to be about 11 inches long and about 5.5 inches wide in the area that was described as the shoulders. The overall shape gave the impression of looking like an hourglass figure. And if you go to my website, there's a drawing of it. They also noticed that there were either two antennas or pointed ears located around the top of the head that appeared to be about 1 inch in length. The head appeared to be tucked inside the body while it was resting. The observers estimated the wings would have been about 15 inches when open. The wife called her husband out to also look at the creature. And the wife thought that it was beautiful and that the color was kind of a pale green iridescent on the outer part of the wings and a cream color skin texture in the middle. The man said he was amazed at what he saw and he never seen anything like it before. They said the best way they could say that was like an overgrown moth, but the witness also said to me, said, it looked like what you might think a fairy would look like. And, you know, I have one of those reports in my Astonishing Encounters book. I was reluctant till I talked to that witness, and that was such a detailed account. That's another story. Anyhow, the couple had to leave the home for a while. Before they left, the wife went to the house to get a camera to take a picture of the strange winged creature. The woman stood about a foot away from the creature and turned on the power switch for the camera, but it would not turn on. The camera had always worked well, so they replaced the battery. The camera still would not turn on. The next day, they tried the camera again, and it powered up as normal, worked fine. When the couple was walking to their car, they noticed a second similar winged creature resting on the outside wall of their home, about 10 feet off the ground. When they came back, both of the creatures were gone.
Wow.
Now, this is kind of interesting with the malfunction of the camera. Maybe coincidence, but in more recent years, and again, I heard this years ago, there have been numerous incidents, especially with low-level UFO cases in recent years, where people have attempted to take photographs of low-level UFOs with their phone cameras or digital cameras, and the camera would malfunction.
That's right.
I had one case last year up in the mountains, up towards Donegal. Beautiful morning, guy sitting by his window drinking coffee. All of a sudden, it got almost jet black, like it was a terrible storm. And he called his dog, and his dog wouldn't go out with him, which was so unusual. He stepped outside, walked outside, and 500 feet above him is this huge, solid, triangular object that's hovering there, making absolutely no sound. He had just grabbed his fully charged cell phone camera, he aimed his camera at it, and it immediately completely discharged all the power in the battery.
And you know that problem in keeping batteries charged has happened in crop formations. It has happened at animal mutilation sites. When 2020 first came on as a TV show back around 1979, it was the same time that I decided that I had to try to get to the bottom of why were all of these animals dying in Colorado, where I was director of special projects at the CBS station there. And I didn't know if it was a government project or what, and I wanted to get the answers. And my audio guy on another subject told me he had just come off a shoot for this brand new show, 2020, and that when they would have all of their battery packs, which we had to use back then, charged at night, and they would drive to where there was a mutilated animal, they couldn't get one single battery charged belt to work. And he said they were making calls back to New York saying, we charge the batteries, but we have no power and we're out in the middle of nowhere. And he said this happened 5 or 6 times to the point that it became so spooky. And here is this professional crew working for this New York production company, and they couldn't keep their belts powered up. And to this day, those kinds of anomalies of power drains at animal mutilations and crop formations that happened over and over. Stan, do you think, though, it's happening because we are dealing with other dimensional insertions that when the other dimension inserts into this dimension, there is some kind of automatic physics that causes some kind of power drain?
Well, as I mentioned before, I have no doubt that there's an energy connection to the phenomena we're dealing with. And I think as our science begins to progress, I think we're going to begin to have some answers as to what we're dealing with, hopefully.
What do you think when you speculate?
Well, all I can say is, we can speculate forever. I don't have the answers, but it's happening not just with UFO cases, it's happening with the cryptid cases as well. And many people in the paranormal field tell me the same thing happened with them when they're dealing with haunted phenomena, that they're having a lot of cases where they're having power loss as well. So there's something here that might be common to various phenomena, and we just have to look further into it to find out what's going on.
Well, dimensional penetration is probably going to be a subject we're going to hear more and more about, because the physics and the papers are moving that direction. And it would be the idea we're in one dimension. Let's call our dimension middle C on the piano. And that right next 9 millimeters away, somebody in NASA told me, is another dimension. And it could be C sharp. And then there is another dimension, and it's D. And if you went up and said 88 keys on a piano, white and black, that it would be a metaphor for a true insight about how the big cosmos with a capital C is constructed, and that the key, the literal key, are the frequencies of each dimension, and that some dimensional intelligences can penetrate other dimensions. And we right now, as Homo sapiens sapien on Earth, unless the government is doing it secretly, it's a technology we haven't mastered, but the physics is taking us there. And that means, Stan, that maybe what we're going to do is get a breakthrough about other intelligence in the universe, but not just this universe, but other dimensions that might go on infinitely. And that is the kind of phenomena that you and I have been trying to understand for a very long time. And I want to thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing these fascinating encounters and your research in Pennsylvania. And with everybody understanding, it isn't just Pennsylvania. These are phenomena that are taking place around this planet in both hemispheres. And thank heavens you are there in Pennsylvania, trying always to report the facts, even if they are as highly strange as anything anybody could ever imagine. Thank you, Stan, for joining Phenomena Radio tonight.
Thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
We'll do it again on the next batch of new cases as we move into 2018. Let's do it again in a few months.
All right. Sounds like a good time to do. Have a good holiday, by the way.
Thank you. Onward.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you so much, Linda. Next week on Phenomenon Radio Live, Nick Redfern rejoins the show to talk about his new book, New World Order. We are certainly looking forward to this interview. For John Burroughs, I would like to say that hopefully in the coming week or two, we're going to have an update from John. I had talked to him yesterday, had some good news from some of the preliminary medical reports that have come back, and we're real excited about that. Still some to go, but hopefully we can get an update from him real soon. For Linda Moulton Howe, our very special guest, Stan Gordon, I am Race Hobbs, and our prayers are with you, Brother John, as always. Thank you all for listening right here on Your Contact that brings you the very best in paranormal radio topics live on the internet. We're KGRAradio.com. Have a great night and a great weekend, everybody.